Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor Space. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. The session is recorded and will be available on demand 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It'll run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speaker for introductions.
Welcome. I think we hear so many about Copilot in the current time that I want to ask you, are you ready for this journey? Are you ready for your next journey with Copilot Studio? Because in this session, I will prepare you to go with your first agent or maybe a Copilot extension or what else. Maybe we will focus a little bit on agents first because agents, that's a new buzzword we hear all around when you are talking about Microsoft Copilot, the M365 Copilot, and so on. So there are so many Copilots out there. Yeah, and before I start, maybe you don't know me, so I want to introduce myself. My name is Nicole Enders. I'm a managing consultant for a company in Germany. I'm a Microsoft MVP. I'm doing a lot of stuff around the modern workplace. And if you are talking about the modern workplace and you are dealing with Microsoft technology, then yes, on the one hand, you have Microsoft 365, so Teams, SharePoint, Planner, and so on. But on the other hand, you have a lot of other possibilities. For example, with Microsoft Azure, I'm doing a lot of with the Azure AI Foundry when the Copilot Studio does not fit for my customer requirements. And if you want to contact me, I have these QR codes at the end of the session as well. But here you can also use this at this time and contact me. And as you see, my favorite hashtags you see here, it's about the modern workplace, as I said, but you find AI, mixed reality, collaborative apps. So there's a lot of stuff around there. I'm also an author, but it's only books which are written in German. So if you're a person who can read the German, speak German, then my books are also a good option. Otherwise, you find a lot of on LinkedIn about me because I'm posting there. They're mainly about everything I'm doing, and I'm doing a lot of sessions all around the globe. Yeah, but now let's dive into the topic. So this is an AI generated image. So I used the new possibilities in ChatGPT, and I'm really happy that now we get really cool pictures. In the past, it was not so easy as it is today. And what do you see here? You see a lot of people who have questions. And you see this woman in the middle. She is a little bit, I'm not sure, frustrated. Is it too much work or whatever. So this is the person who is working in the HR department. And if I'll think about my colleagues who are working in the HR department, yes, that's a team, so it's not a single person as here on this picture. But if you compare the number of HR employees compared with the number of all employees in the company, that's a huge difference. And everybody of us has questions. Maybe not every day, maybe not every time. And sometimes we can help each other as well. But there's always the point where nobody else has the answer except of this colleague here. So here somebody has a question about benefits, somebody else wants to see what's about his request, maybe for a vacation, some days off. So it's getting important if I want to book something where I want to spend time on my vacation. Yeah, and that's a huge problem because, as I said, we are too many people with too many questions for only the small group of people. And the next point is, if I have a question maybe in the evening because I'm sitting at home, I'm thinking about, sorry, I'm thinking about where do I spend my vacation? Do I want to go to Iceland, for example? So Iceland is on my bucket list if I want to do a vacation. And then I see a really good offer, and I see, okay, in this time you could do, and you could travel to Iceland. Now I need to know, what do I need to do to get some days off? Is there a special approval process or whatever? And at the evening, it's sure, so it's completely clear that my colleague is not available. Maybe there is a solution for this. So think about that we build a chatbot. So chatbot is a wording we find all around the globe if we are talking about generative AI, about a digital assistant, a companion, or whatever. In the Microsoft world, we talk about Copilot and agents. So if we go to the Copilot Studio now in a few seconds, then you will see that this wording is right there. But from a not Microsoft perspective, it's a chatbot we want to build. Yeah, and so let's go to Copilot Studio so we have a look around, because I want to prepare you for your personal journey to create an agent for the scenario which is important for you. So let's think about, we are here. So you have the Copilot Studio, and if you start this, I'm here on the home screen. You see I already built some agents in the past. So we see the agent type, for example, right here. Yeah, and I could go here with this input form. So it's a little bit weird at the beginning. I can use the Copilot in Copilot Studio to create my own agent. I can do this with a wizard, as I could do this in the past as well. But here in this case, if you don't really know how to fill out the different fields, if you are not aware about what is an instruction and what is knowledge and how should I configure my agent, then this can be a good starting point. And you see here these examples, so help desk, expense tracking, and HR and benefits. I click on HR and benefits because it's very close to our topic. You see that he prepares a prompt for me. So ChatGPT and Co, maybe you are also aware that you need to add a prompt. So that's the instruction. What should ChatGPT, for example, do? And here in this case, you say, okay, what needs the Copilot Studio to do for you? So what's the prompt about? Create an agent for topics related to human resources and employee benefits. So maybe this part is interesting, because we see we want to create an agent, that's sure, and he should answer questions around human resources and employee benefits. At this moment, our agent wouldn't know anything about these topics. So maybe we have to give him some knowledge. And in many cases, you already have the information. So think about the HR department, which has maybe a SharePoint site, and you can access the SharePoint site via your intranet. So that's where I said, okay, I open here my SharePoint site, and here are a lot of documents. So you see documents about compensation and benefits. Maybe the answer for one of the questions we saw on the slide is already here. You see something like a recruitment or onboarding guide. What about work hours or absence management? So if I want to request some days off, maybe that's here. But I don't need to go to these documents, so as an end user, because this will be our knowledge in our agent. And I already prepared this here. That's my HR companion. But I want to show you another way how you can create your agent. That's only the home page. Maybe you already saw this. So here on the left navigation, we see a lot of stuff. So you see create. That's the point where we will go now. But you also see the list of agents and you see flows and flows. Now, maybe you will ask, flows, that's something in Power Automate, right? And yes, it is. So if we think about that we need some business logic in our agent, then we need to create a flow. And a flow, even in the not Microsoft wording, you would create a workflow and you would say, okay, how is it triggered? Which actions need to be done? Are there some conditions where you want to split how the process is done and so on? That's a flow, and you can use this flow in your agent later on. But let's start with the creation of the agent first. So I click on create. And here, if you are starting your journey and you have no idea how to build an agent, then these examples, so these templates can be quite nice. So I know it's not the usual case that you say, okay, I want to have an agent for safe travels, or maybe you say, why do I need a agent for getting weather information? But if you want to see how an agent can be implemented, then it's a good starting point. It probably won't be um, your final agent, but it's a good point where you can learn how to build your agent. I click here on new agent because I don't want to start with a template. I did this in the past. So I say new agent. And here you find something which is quite similar to the agent builder we see in the M365 Copilot. So there you can also build agents and it looks quite familiar. And here the Copilot says that he's here to help us and I should explain what I want to build. I already prepared this, so I will paste it in here and then explain what I did. So this is a complete different scenario. So I said, okay, the HR companion, that's something I will show you after this step. But here in this case, I said, okay, I want to create an agent which is used for partners on my public website. So this is an external scenario. And this agent should answer questions around about the production state of my products. So the partner ordered some products and he wants to see, okay, is it still on hold? Are the products in the production process or are we very close to delivering the product? And so the partner can ask for the status of each ordered item, and he can also manage his orders. So it's not only getting information, it's also doing some actions, so triggering some actions. And if I say, okay, now I start this process, he will prepare something for me. But if you see here, the language is set on English per default. That's because I'm working with the English version here of the Copilot Studio. But if I would like to create an agent which has another language as the primary language, then I could do this or change this right here. That doesn't mean that your agent will only understand English here in our case. So we are using generative AI in the background and we have a large language model. And this means even if I would starting a conversation in German, he would probably understand me because he's translating everything. Will be everything correct? No, because that's always with generative AI that it's not, I would say, completely sure to get the right information, but that doesn't matter because we have a good knowledge base at the end, and I will show you how to implement this. So here he says, okay, great. I understood what you want to do. Would you like to name your agent order management assistant? Well, I like this. So I would confirm this. I say, okay. And now he's thinking about, do we need some example actions? So what should the agent do? So first, let's define what the agent should do. For example, the agent should provide information about the production state, blah, blah, blah. And could you provide more details or confirm? That's great. So now I could adjust a lot of more, but due to the time, I would say, okay, I'm not adding so much other stuff. Yeah, and now he wants to get the different actions. So if you already saw an agent, then you see that there can be some example prompts. And here in this case, he also provided some. So I say, I I'm fine with this. So I say, okay again. And here on the right side, you see how he's changing the description and the instructions of my assistants. So, please provide them. Um, that's that's enough. So everything he has done was completely on his side. I only said that is fine. And now I could have an endless conversation. So that's the important part. If you are ready, if you see, okay, he's prepared everything, so he's changing the information here on the right panel, you can click on create. And now the agent is prepared for you. So it's setting up the agent, and then that's the point where we will be here in the, I would say the design viewer of our agent, and the description is here, and the general instructions are here. That was the part he prepared for us. Everything else is the same when I go to my HR companion, and I will show you this companion because I prepared a lot of more stuff right there. So I go here to the HR companion. So if you hover over agents, you can go here and switch here, or you go back to the home page, for example, and you would click here on the HR companion. So that's the way how you access your already existing agents. Yeah, so at the time that he has loaded everything, we can compare this a little bit because that is an agent I created. I think it's a few months ago as I did this, and so you see here my description is much shorter, and my general instructions that are not bullet points. So I wrote it a little bit in a different way, but he understands what I really want to do. And before I go a little bit deeper at this moment, please don't forget you have here this testing pane. If it's not there, then you can say, okay, I want to test my agent, and this pane will be opened again. So if I close this and I say, okay, test again, then you see that it's appearing here on the right side. And that's the time where you can test it every time when you change something. Yeah, and as you see here, he says, okay, I'm an HR companion, I'm your virtual assistant. What do I want to do? And I clicked here into this action, and he switched immediately into the topic. So what is a topic? Think about a topic that it's something where you um, prepare your conversation. So you see here something like on conversation start. So if you have an important meeting and you are thinking about how the conversation could work, then you think about, okay, we will say hello, we will say goodbye, what are the different topics we want to discuss, for example. And that's the way how you prepare your agent as well. So you think about the different conversations where you want to have a very dedicated way how the conversation would work. And in the time of generative AI, there's not so much we need to prepare, but the beginning and the end, that could be something we really want to adjust. And I did this right here. So if you start with a Copilot Studio and you have built your agent, then this message would not look like this. So I really like these icons, and I added them. So if I click here on my message, for example, we have a look right here, then I can change this and say, okay, maybe I want to have a different icon. I go here and I say, I want to have this person right here. So I change this. The text for sure as well. And you see we have some variables right here. They are already prepared in the templates for us, so you can reuse them. So if you ever need the name of your agent in another topic, you can copy this and paste this at another topic. So that's quite nice. So I said here, I want to get the message that AI is used. So this was in the template as well, but it was a much longer information and I shortened it a bit. So this is my message for a conversation start. But there are a lot of, I say, okay, leave because I don't want to change something. But there are a lot of more topics which are prepared for you. So we have conversation start, we have the end of the conversation, and you see something like escalate here. So think about that I really would use an agent for customer support. So on my public website, for example, you probably know a lot of chatbots out there on public websites, or maybe if you are going to a web shop or whatever, and then you see the chatbot. And if you have the situation that the chatbot don't understand what you really want, then you would like to have an escalation to a human, to a real person who gets every information of the conversation you already had with the agent, and then this person can probably help you a little bit more. I hate this every time when I have a chatbot and I need to repeat everything to the real person when I escalate from the chatbot. So here, that's your point where you can say, okay, what is done when we have an escalation? Goodbye and greeting and so on. So you see, there's a lot of stuff you can look right in. And this page, so this topics, that is something which was already there when we had the service which was called Power Virtual Agents. So at this point, that was not generative AI so far. Generative AI comes into play if you go to the settings of your agent. And here is a navigation item for this. If you go on generative AI, at the beginning, your agent will be using the classic mode. You need to switch this to generative AI. And then you can decide how generative AI should work in your agent. So should it be very creative? That's the buzzword hallucination, if you already heard this. So if your agent is very creative, then probably he will answer with slightly wrong information because he's doing some interpretations. So he thinks about the knowledge for sure and he wants to answer you in a correct way. But if he doesn't find the information, he won't probably say that he doesn't know the answer. He will try to find an answer. Medium, that's where he would say, maybe I'm unsure, maybe you can ask in a little bit different way. And if you have the option high, then he would say, oh no, I cannot answer this question because I don't find the information in the documents, for example. So it's something you need to play around a little bit to find the correct behavior of your agent. And it depends a little bit on your data you are using and maybe a little bit of the use case you're using. So this is something where I say, okay, I need to adjust this later when I'm testing with my end users. But let's close the settings for a moment because we skipped the knowledge. So if you are going here with the tabs, you see the knowledge. And knowledge is also on the overview page. So if you scroll down here, you see here, oh, my agent is ready. The details we already had. And here, the orchestration, that's something I would recommend that you enable this, because then generative AI is really good working for you. But here's the part for knowledge, and here's the part for actions. Knowledge and actions are also right here. So if I go on knowledge, it should probably look quite similar. And here you see I already added my SharePoint document library for human resources. If I want to add more knowledge, I can do this. And you see, maybe you have some information on a public website. That can be your public website, but that can be every single site you find in the internet. You can also go and use more SharePoint document libraries, or maybe you are going with Dataverse. So Dataverse is a huge database with all your company data if you're using this. So if you're a Dynamics user, for example, then you will be aware of this. Yeah, and you can also add some documents right from here. So you see here images, audio, videos, files, and they would be stored in Dataverse. So if you're not using Dataverse, then maybe add your images first to a document library in SharePoint, and then you can go with this option. And you see here, I only need to browse here, or I enter the URL of my SharePoint site. So what's important about the knowledge we have here, if I click on edit, for example, the knowledge description, it's very important. So the knowledge name should say which information can be found in this data source. But the description, that's also something which is used by the generative AI. So think about that you add 2 or 3 SharePoint sites at the end, and the agent needs to get enough information so he knows, okay, in which case do I go to the document library human resources, and in which case do I go to the document library for benefits, for example. And so please describe how to deal with the information right here. So if you have knowledge, then the last point, and that's where a lot of magic could happen, is that you can add actions. And for example, I said, okay, I don't want to go with the topic for escalation. I already have a flow in Power Automate for escalations, and this flow is creating a Teams message in a dedicated channel. And I use this as an action right here. So if I click on this, you will see something similar to the knowledge. So we have the action name, and we have a description. So my description is really, really hard to understand for my agent. But if you describe here, when do I want to have an escalation? When does the flow needs to be triggered? Then that's a good point where during the conversation, the agent will decide that it's time for an escalation, and then he will trigger this flow in the background. Yeah, and I go back to the overview page because I have to look a little bit here on the time. So if you scroll down, there's something new because you see here, there are also triggers. Mostly a chatbot bot is triggered by the end user. So the end user decides that he wants to use the chatbot. But in some cases, think about that you are using Microsoft Teams, for example, we could say, if there is a special scenario, and that can be something which is scheduled, so maybe once a week or once a month, I want to trigger this HR companion, maybe because I want to ask a question for every employee. Or if somebody fills out a form with Microsoft Forms, then I want to trigger that this chatbot, so this agent, will ask a question or will send a message to the person. Yeah, and that's something you need to think about if this is your use case. But at the end, there's one important decision you also need to make, and that's where do you want to use your agent. So you probably, in most of the cases, you will use this in Microsoft Teams. So this is your agent, which can be integrated into the Microsoft 365 Copilot, but it can also be a separate agent, so a dedicated menu item on the left navigation in Teams. But as you see, there are some other channels. So, for example, your custom website, or you want to go maybe via email, or if you are using Slack. So, there are a lot of people who are not only using Microsoft technology. You can do this and you can integrate your chatbot right there. So, and here at the end, you see my HR companion can also be used in Teams. I already had a conversation. Um, so that you see, okay, what do you know? And he says, okay, I know a lot of information based on the documents you saw. And then I can ask him whatever question I have. And if he doesn't know, and I say, okay, maybe you have this high mode, and you would say, okay, I don't have the information. Maybe you need to ask a person in the HR department. So, but let's go back to the slides, because I only explained two different scenarios now. So the HR was one scenario, but the other scenario was the customer support or partner support on your public website. But there's so many other use cases you need or you can think about. So IT support, maybe knowledge management, and also think about an agent who helps you in your intranet to find everything you know. An agent who supports you with improving your employee experience, and so on. Resource management, room booking. You don't need to think about an app with a user interface anymore. You can add agents which are accessing your relevant systems, your relevant data, and which can also trigger actions in the different systems you are using. Yeah, and I hope that you now have a lot of ideas how to start with Copilot Studio, how to deal with the different possibilities. I thank you very much, and I'm I'm really curious if you now start with a scenario, what you are doing, and if you get some questions, you can contact me. So that's why I said, okay, it's a good idea to add the QR codes here again. Please contact me on LinkedIn and on X, and then we can have a conversation. So I know Copilot Studio is also a topic where you get new information nearly every week. There are new possibilities every time because Microsoft is doing a lot of in this area. So if you are struggling with something, please let's have a chat, and then I'm pretty sure that we find a solution, and then you can have your first agent, or maybe some kind of agent family at the end, and support your end users in your company. Thank you very much.